So we never did get, he got us there, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working Sheik and Volkov,
Yeah.
probably your big crescendo was at WrestleMania 3 there.
Yeah.
Talk about working that event and something that huge in wrestling history.
Well, Adam, it was incredible because there was so many people there. I think people realized it was going to be big, but nobody realized it was going to be that big. And crikey, you had all the media there. God, they had people from CNN. They had people from Britain there. They had people, two different Japanese television studios. Australia was there. It was just huge. And the fact is that they had Brian and I going against Nikolai and the Sheik right before Hulk and Andre came out. So the people were getting, you know, antsy. They wanted to see the main event. And to be honest with you, the finish that they gave for Brian and I against Nikolai and the Sheik was so bad, it just made me sick because it was, and I realized they have to bring Jim Duggan into the situation. And, you know, we had worked countless times with Nikolai and Sheik and had, you know, pretty good matches. And to have Jim Duggan interfere in the match and then us to be happy that he interfered and we lose, you know, I mean, the credibility of that finish was just horrible. And I thought, Jesus Christ, what is he trying to do here, you know? So, you know, the writing was on the wall there in terms of how they were going to use us. And we were fortunate, you know, to have a good position, but, I mean, the finish of the match was horrible.
You know,
good for Jim Duggan, but not good for the Bees.
Yeah, that's true. Now, if I understand correctly, you actually witnessed that fight that's obviously talked about backstage from the backstage area with Adrian, Adonis, and Dan Spivey. Was that the case, and what actually happened?
Well, it was in Flint, Michigan, and Flint was a real rough town, and we were in a hockey arena there. So we were watching the matches, and Danny Spivey they had brought him in, and he was working with Adrian Adonis, and Danny was pretty green, and Adrian would take what they'd call liberties with the young guys. You know, he'd sort of be stiff with them and blah, 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 and kick them hard or hit them hard. And Danny Spivey was a tough son of a gun, boy. I mean...
well, both guys were tough, we should say, but like you said, Adrian...
Yeah, Adrian was tough, too, but Adrian, you got to realize, was about 45 pounds overweight. He really got out of shape. And what happened was he, you know, was abusing Danny in the ring. So Danny said, hey, you do that again, I'm going to let you have it. Well, in Flint, Adrian put the sleeper on Danny and started choking him. So Danny elbowed him, and when Adrian let loose, Danny Spivey clipped him, knocked him down, and then he kicked him. And Adrian went out like a light, and Jimmy Hart was, he looked like somebody cut his tail off. He didn't know what the hell to do. He was jumping up. His eyes looked like baseballs hanging out of his head. So we were standing back there, and I think Bob Orton went in to help Adrian, and they just rang the bell, and a couple of us got Danny Spivey back to the the babyface locker room, and Danny Spivey was just fuming. He said, that son of a bitch, I told him blah, blah, blah. So meanwhile, Danny's in there, and then Adrian comes in, and Adrian's, he's got a cut over his forehead, and he's got, where he got kicked in the mouth, his lip is cut vertically, so he's bleeding. So Adrian comes in and he starts talking to Danny, and he tried to leg dive Danny, and Danny hit him with the biggest left uppercut I've ever seen. And he hit him right smack, I think it was on his, it was on his right cheekbone. And Adrian went up in the air about 1.5 feet and landed flat like a big turtle and didn't move. And he, Adrian's eyes went back, and then Danny Spivey wanted to kick him. He wanted to put the boots to him, and and Pat Patterson, who was the agent there, was just going crazy. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. Well, meanwhile, we get Adrian up to his feet, and Danny hit him so hard with that uppercut that his cheekbone was protruding through the flesh. You could see the shininess of his cheekbone. He had a big gash over his eye, and his lip was in two. So he got the shit beat out of him, and from that point on, Adrian was never the same. I think he never was the same in the ring.
Handled that?
Pardon?
Sorry, go ahead.
Adrian was never the same in the ring. I think he had, hurt his equilibrium, and I know he left and then, sort of straightened himself out and went to Japan, and then he came back from Japan, and that's when he was in the fatal car accident. But, we had lots of matches, Greg and I, with Adrian and Jesse. And Adrian, when he was lighter was, his timing in the ring was incredible. He was a great worker. But he just got so out of shape, and then he, abused himself so much that, with his habits, you can't do that and then expect to perform every night. It took its toll on him, and it was tragic, but I think that was what had happened when, guys are on the road every single night. They're in the bars, they're running around, they're in the bar every night, they're on an airplane every day, and you do that for a couple of weeks straight, and some guys just can't take it, and they fly off the deep end.
Well, do you think, obviously, you hear about people taking advantage in the ring, more so in the older generations and whatnot, like you were saying, what Adrian was doing with Dan. But do you think Dan held it or did it right as far as doing some of the business in the ring as opposed to leaving everything in the back?
Well, I think that, he had more or less said to Adrian, please, he was trying to, say, I don't want you to take advantage of me, I'm going to work with you, blah, 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 but, don't, just go off and haul off and kick me and try to hurt me, because I won't take it. So I think that, Adrian just didn't think anything of it. He thought, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, hell broke loose and he got shit beat out of him. It was simple as that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, that type of thing happens. Because the reason I asked that question, that follow-up there, was because I always heard somebody who's pretty well respected by both the fans and the boys, Roddy Piper, always say, I always heard Roddy say when we spoke with him and in other avenues, as far as personal business. You do business in the ring and deal with the personal stuff in the back.
Well, that's true, but I think sometimes when a guy abuses you over and over again, and some guys just don't have a short fuse, and I think Danny was in that situation.
Well, here's the thing too. Have you ever had any issue with somebody trying to take advantage of you early on, or at any point in your career?
You know what? I was very fortunate. I never had. I don't think I ever had anybody. Some guys that hit you hard. Well, you just hit them, the same way. And I think if you didn't, tick for tat, then they would try to take advantage of you. But I was very fortunate, and I certainly was not a real tough guy. I didn't fight with anybody. I was doing my best every day just to, do the best I possibly could in the ring to get the match over. And, I can really honestly say I had very few fellows that I didn't, get along with. So
okay.
I'm not. People didn't feel the same way about me, but that's